Tesla has finally opened up their charging standard.
Yeah, buddy.
Now there was a fun thread on the Tesla Motors Club forums about this, where there's some drama around. Why now? Do you want to get into it a little bit, Mike? Explain what the charger, what
So,
the connector is, and what they've done.
well, as we all know in the world of Tesla, we all feel our connector is the best out in the market. It's slim, it's easy to use, it just works, much like an Apple product when you plug it in, which you can't really say for the CCS standard or the CHAdeMO standard or some of the others. Some of the more enlightening things that came out of this document that we have on the screen right now, if you read through all the details, is this connector is rated at like 500 amps. And they actually have a slightly modified one that's rated at 900 amps. There's no mention I can find yet of the cable size or active cooling, but what was in there is they were saying they can do the 900 amps without cooling the connector on the vehicle.
Wow.
Which, yeah, I mean, if you think of it, that's a lot of juice you're going to be pumping into a battery.
That's impressive.
The other thing that came out, which is interesting from a very geeky point of view, is a lot of the signaling that's being used on the Tesla connector is really CCS in disguise. It's just, they're called the same family. They're related. So there's a lot of discussion of how Tesla could leverage this as the new standard, as a CCS version 3 standard or something to that effect, and not alienate everybody and all the work that's already been done.
I see. So try to make it more of as a next step as opposed to just trying to replace it.
That's the impression. That's the impression some of us have.
I think that's essentially an issue though, because now it's almost like USB standards, right? It's like it's the plug that's the convenience for everybody. If everybody's now going to update all their adapters to a different plug, I don't care what protocol you're using under the hood, right? I care about when I plug in the thing, does it fit?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the average user, to be clear. But from a manufacturing point of view, if the standards are the same or reasonably close, that's not a blocker then to accept this new standard. North American, what was it? North American Connector Standard or whatever
they want to call it.
Whatever they want to call it.
Well, it's called the NACS. Yes,
NACS,
North American
Charging Standard.
Connector Standard.
Connector Standard. I wanted to talk a little bit about why this connector even exists.
Oh no, wait, sorry, we're wrong. It is the charging standard. North America charging standard.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, and it's typically because the rest of the industry was taking too long. When the Roadster came out, for example, back in 2006, 2007, they had to design their own connector because the connectors at the time, in the 90s, they had these inductive paddle chargers. I think it was more of a consumer thing, so people weren't going to be scared. Oh, if I have to charge this thing in the rain, am I going to get electrocuted?
So it's not unreasonable.
so to charge the cards, they'd have these paddles, which is similar to how your inductive charging works on your phone these days, is the oscillating magnetic field. So now, okay, Model S is coming out. J-Plug exists, but Tesla wants to be able to do fast DC charging. And CCS isn't ready yet again, right? So they're like a few years behind. And so Tesla needs to come up with their own connector. And I remember seeing this connector for the first time back in 2011. And I remember being kind of pissed about it, mainly because there was this existing connector over here. So here's what we're calling J-Plug for the listeners. I have a picture of the J-Plug, the Tesla connector, and what is the European AC standard. These days it's called Type 2. We used to call it the Meninquez connector because that was the manufacturer. And I remember thinking, why didn't they just use the Meninquez connector? Because the Tesla connector is very similar. I know it looks bigger here, but it's not that much bigger. Like the handle part is the same size. It's very convenient to plug in. They needed a DC standard on it, and what I wanted them to do was to use this proposed. This was never official, but this proposed use of the Meninquez connector, which here they call DC mid. So you have the AC pins, but you reassign them for DC, which is what Tesla is doing already with their own connector. And the main reason a lot of people were disappointed that they didn't just use this connector was in Europe, they need this kind of connector because they have to charge on 3-phase. Because by law, you can't pull more than 32 amps on a single phase. I wanted them to use this because then we could have this one standard for the whole world. But they didn't go that way. And anyway, they made their own connector. It's a nice connector, and it's pretty nice for North America anyway. So
I would argue it's smaller, it's more compact, it's
smaller, it's more compact. It's designed very well. If you look at the contacts, there's contact both inside and outside on this pin here. So there's lots of extra surface area contact, so that amperage gets spread out over a larger surface area. It's also heavily isolated. There's lots of plastic in between the two sides.
No crossover, no crossover flash, no arcing, or supposedly.
Tesla's opening their standard now. Why 2022? Why didn't we do this in 2012 when it would have had the opportunity to become the standard, right? It is. We've already discussed, as at least from the size and user friendliness aspect, it seems to be much better. Now, I guess what we didn't cover is from a power aspect. What's the power look like on the Tesla connector? Is CCS Type 2 able to do faster charging than a Tesla charger? Or are they comparable?
Well, according to what Mike just talked about earlier,
they're comparable. I mean,
I know the answer. I'm asking this on behalf of our.
I mean, clearly, the connector is able to do everything that the CCS combo connector can do, and something that's a third of the size, maybe less.
So there doesn't appear to be a downside. There's a lot of upsides. So again, why didn't Tesla open this up 10 years ago? Why are they doing it now?
Would it be the same reason they never had their tech manuals open for everybody to use? I mean, Tesla's never really been an open company as far as any technical data goes.
Well,
so to use your earlier analogy, the following Apple.
But definitely they're following Apple anyway. I mean, it's kind of like the Lightning connector. Think about when they started. Again, when I first saw this connector in 2011, I was dumbfounded. One, that they designed their own connector instead of a connector we knew that was coming.
Connectors opened up, probably a money thing, but potential good news, bad news. What do we think this means for?
I think it's good news. I think overall good news.
Overall good. Okay.
Yeah, it's it's good for everybody. I think I would prefer that the whole industry go to that connector, and I don't expect them to, at least for what they're doing. Like, I mean, you can see like that combo connector. What is that, right? That is just a kludge. It's like, okay, we have our existing AC connector, and we just want to slap DC onto it, and that's what they did. As opposed to designing it in from the start, which is what Tesla did. So if it can be seen as, okay, it's actually slightly future proof, that as we go to faster charging standards, that the Tesla form factor can support those and the existing CCS can't, then that would be a natural evolution to it. And then maybe eventually all those connectors will sort of pan out.